Hello everyone. I've been talking about A.H.L. Hart for the last couple of videos, and I just want to consider something about this man. Obviously we've looked into him and his MI5 history, and he had a huge influence on our legal system in the UK. He was born to immigrant parents, so he's come here and had massive changes over our legal system, meaning that our legal system was something very different. And we do know that it was very different because in Somerset and Stewart, which is a 1772 case, which was about slavery, the judge in that case, which is common law, stated the state of slavery is such of a nature that it is incapable of being introduced on any reasons, moral or political, but only by positive law, which preserves its force long after the reasons, occasions and times itself from whence it was created is erased from memory. Lord Mansfield did not think highly of statute law, and that is what positive law is. So 1772 we started seeing massive changes in our legal system whereby statute law became the norm. And if we think about the American Constitution, that was written law, which we didn't have in the UK, and we didn't have those sorts of written laws, although we did have the Magna Carta and the Bill of Rights, and we did have other documented laws and coded laws. But that begs the question, before the Magna Carta and the Bill of Rights, what existed before then? I don't think there was any codified law. Anyway, back to A.H.L. Hart, who was an MI5 agent, and he was born 1907. He took a first class in 1929 and he became a barrister 1932 to 1940. He was also married to a sleeper Communist Party of Great Britain member, Jennifer Fisher Williams, who was a civil servant and then became a senior civil servant. And as a sleeper communist, she was also a historian, which I find particularly interesting because that changes everything. So I just want to have a look into MI5 briefly. It was set up, it was a military intelligence. MI6 is secret intelligence, so it was military, so we better remember that. And it was set up or founded in 1909, just in time, I guess, for World War I, right? And it was military intelligence in time for World War I, and concentrating originally on the activities of the Imperial German government. So it was watching the German government, which was becoming very nationalist, I'm guessing. Let's have a look to see if that's the case. In 1850, the states of Germany had rapidly become industrialised, similar to ours, with particular strengths in coal, iron, chemicals and railways. It had a big population boom, similar to us. It was a success in the natural sciences, especially in physics and chemistry. and became an industrial, technological and scientific power in Europe. And by 1913, Germany was the largest economy in continental Europe. Germany also became a great power, building the longest railway network of Europe and the world's strongest army. Yeah, so it had the world's strongest army and a fast-growing industrial base. Starting very small in 1871, in a decade the Navy became second only to Britain's Royal Navy. So that would be why the UK was watching them. And obviously it was the Bolsheviks who brought about World War I and World War II, and that would be the Bolsheviks in Russia and that Slav area. And of course we ended up in the UK allying with Russia or the Soviet Union or the Khazarian Empire maybe. I wanted to then talk about number 10, Inter-Allied Commando, and this was X. This was a British military commando unit called X, which is interesting, and it was mainly Jewish people, refugees from National Socialism in Wales. X troop. Number 3. So number 3 was the X troop, perhaps better known as X, was possibly the strangest unit in the British Army, since it consisted mostly of personnel who were technically enemy allies, German and Austrian Jews. So were they allies because they were Jews, or were they allies because they were German and Austrian? And were they enemies because they were German and Austrian, or enemies because they were Jews? And when you think of X, you do see the satanic Elon Musk with his Baphomet outfit as X Corp. And everyone's rushing to Twitter because apparently Jack Dorsey is his name. I don't know. He's gone, and everyone felt that he was full on communist. And apparently Elon Musk claims to be the free speech expert. He's got a lot of X going on in his works, SpaceX. And I just can't help but wonder if his X corporations are receiving money from the British MI5 government. I can imagine that they are, but that's just speculation. I wanted to also look into the period of time with regards to the voting going on in the UK, because obviously the military set up in 1909 and we'd only just seen suffrage for men and women at that time. We'll have a look at the voting timeline. 1832, I've gone over it in short videos, marking the beginning of a series of electoral reforms. The Reform Act 1832 was a pivotal moment in British political history. Then you've got the Reform Act 1867, Representation of the People Act, and you see that during the 1830s to the 1928, we started to see everybody voting in this so-called democracy. And I just wanted to look into the institution of Prime Minister, because it was the glorious revolution in 1688 helped produce a new power balance within the English constitution. Monarchs became more dependent upon Parliament to obtain tax revenues and pursue their favoured policies, while the House of Commons was establishing its dominance over the House of Lords. This changed constitutional structure, that means the law, created a potential opening for a politician who could deliver control of Parliament for the monarch. The reason why I've become sceptical of the government is because of what we're seeing today. You can never hold a government to account because they're constantly switching and changing, so you can never go back and say, oh, Labour did that. You're just encouraged to vote Conservatives instead. So the government can never be held to account, whereas the monarch can. So this is why, and we are a constitutional monarchy, not a democracy. And this is why it's important that we go back to that, so that we can hold the monarch to account. And now we've got all these statute laws, which is everything that in the 1700s they despised. The courts, the judiciary, they despised the statute laws, and they came about probably when government took over in 1688. So they'd had 100 years of statute law that Lord Mansfield had got fed up with. Probably. Possibly. And just think about where the Prime Minister lives. At number 10 Downing Street. Remember number 10? Intel service, inter-allied commando. Number 10 Downing Street is where the government, Prime Minister, lives. And that was constructed and completed by 1684. Just in time for the glorious revolution, huh? And the reason why I think this is important is because I've mentioned this before, but my family, or half of my family, come from Celtic line. And they, in the 1800s, so long as they built a chimney within 24 hours on some land, common land, they could take ownership of that land, and then they could continue to build their house. And that side of my family became farmers. They had masses of land in Wales, and I'll take you there where they had land, because they built their families' houses too on the land that they owned, and then they ended up selling it, of course. And property developers round about the 60s started building, and probably the 80s. But that shows an incredible amount of freedom that we had in the 1800s, and we must have had even more freedom in the 1700s, and probably 10 times more than that in the 1600s. And this is why I'm going back to these Noahide laws, the 30 of them, because I'm wondering if we were running our country on these 30, or possibly there were more, But these 30 laws, no idolatry, no passing a child through fire in worship of Molech, no stick divination, no witchcraft or sorcery, no mediums, no necromancy. Be fruitful and multiply seed. Don't draw up marriage contracts for homosexuals. Well, that was only in the last century that happened. And I feel that what's happening is these people and this military force have come in and changed our legal system around through the government. And I am starting to see things very differently, because I'm wondering, because you look at the WEF and I'm not seeing them as a friend, but I'm questioning, because they're all German, and it seemed like the UK government was going after Germany, and this is something that I'm going to look into. But in the meantime, be careful if you're using this, because I don't believe for 1 second that these people are on our side just because they say a few words which make people cheer for joy. Castration, grafting trees, striking a Jew, and I'm beginning to wonder, were we the Jews? And the other ones are the what was it that Jesus said? Synagogue of Satan. Anyway, I'll leave it at that for now, and you can let me know what you think. Please like, subscribe, and thank you for commenting if you do, and liking and the rest of it. Thank you. Bye.